There we go. It happened. Good morning. I can see somebody has already posted on the stream. That's nice to see. We have our first viewer. So welcome to Beyond the Canvas Conversations with Gamma. This is our first go at it. Something a little bit different. Last week we held our monthly kind of gigantic art space, which we like to do and chat with all our partner artists and other creators dropping work on Gamma, and then collectors and whoever else would like to come up for a chat. So these are going to be, I'm not even going to put a timeline on them. Maybe it'll be more frequent, maybe it won't. Let's see. But conversations with people from the ecosystem. Let's call it Web3. Let's call it ordinals. Let's call it inscriptions. Let's call it NFTs. Let's call it digital art. Whatever you'd like to call it. It'll be artists. It'll be developers. It'll be collectors. People with different sorts of involvement. But today, and we have another very special guest coming, we're starting with our very important Gamma partner artist ambassadors. We're going to have Ollie and Empress Trash. And today we have Ollie, and Empress Trash has just shown up. So here we go. We've just started, Empress. I've just done the whole spiel. We even had this intro that I was not sure if we're going to use or not, because I was like, can we use our own intro? Can we not? I don't know. It was like a 30-second countdown. So we're live. We're on the air. But welcome, Ollie, and welcome, Empress Trash, our Gamma partner artist ambassadors.
Hi. Can you hear me?
We can. And I was going to say good morning to you both. However, it's only good morning in Australia. It's evening for you guys, or even more late for Ollie.
Yeah, it's 10 o'clock here in the UK.
4 p.m. here in Mexico City.
So there we go. We're so spread around the world and we can connect like this globally. Look, Nick said GM. Good morning to Nick. Lovely co-founder of Gamma. But yeah, I was saying, Empress, that this stemmed from an idea that you and I talked about months ago. Do you remember what we chatted about and like why we're doing Beyond the Canvas Conversations with Gamma?
Yeah, I brought up because I really like talking about art and sharing art personally. And I brought up the idea, already doing spaces. Gamma was already doing spaces, but then having a live stream, because there's a visual component to it when talking about art and artists' work. And I find it's easier to just share in real time, like, hey, this is the art we're talking about, than necessarily on a spaces and putting it up in the Jumbotron thing and all the tech stuff that goes with it. It feels really disjointed to me sometimes. So that's why I suggested the live stream, to be able to, or even pre-recorded stream, but a live stream is cool, especially if we can, if other artists eventually want to join and different things like that was the idea behind it. So mostly just to talk about the same thing that we talk about in spaces, but just be able to actually see the art and interact with the art and be like, hey, this is what we're talking about. So yeah, that's my reasoning.
No, I love it. I took it on board. Obviously, we at Gamma, as you know, and having you two and Pavel and the artist as ambassadors, it's super important to receive that sort of feedback and then act on it to enhance the space and to expose artists to collectors and just add meaning and actually walk the walk, not just talk the talk, in terms of championing art and artists. It's so important. And I love, as you know, I love having a chat regardless. So this suits me perfectly.
Yeah. And I think especially with the Bitcoin market, there's a lot of people who use Bitcoin who are already big about Bitcoin stuff, and they understand ordinals, and they understand trading PFPs and meme coins and stuff like that. But sometimes art is a little bit more to understand what is happening with it, and art really, you should take time with it and unpack it and what the artist is intent is, but then also how it relates to you. And I just think having these discussions helps facilitate that to a broader community of people who maybe, they maybe want to understand art and why we're insane, but they don't necessarily you know, they didn't go to school for it. They didn't do all the things around it, study the history of it. They don't have time to do that, but maybe they have time to like sit and watch us talk about it.
100%. Before we continue on, because I've got a question for both of you on that note, but perhaps we should quickly introduce ourselves for anyone who's watching who might not know us. So I'm happy to start. So I'm Brett. Or Eli Herf is my old pseudonym, but I've kept my pseudonym, but I'm still doxed. I'm Brett. My face is everywhere. I don't pretend I'm not who I am. And I'm head of growth at Gamma, and I've worked at Gamma for the last 3 years. And I wear a lot of different hats, but one of my favorite things about my job is obviously getting to work so closely with the artists in many different capacities in this way: live streams, spaces, podcasts, blogs, you know, helping them to get started on Bitcoin and so many more things. But that's me in a nutshell. Feel free to either of you to go next, and then go for it. Ollie, I'm gonna direct it then. So yeah.
Cool. So yeah, I'm Ollie, photographer. Been in the space since late 2021. Kind of started off mainly just collecting. So I've got a fair collection across Ethereum and ordinals as well, but really started kind of going back to my kind of photographic roots, and started exploring my own art and releasing my own art from probably around mid 2023, really, maybe early 2023, and yeah, since then just been kind of releasing my own art and trying to kind of help people, mainly focusing on, you know, fully on-chain art. So whether that be on ETH mainnet or obviously in this case, through the work I'm doing with yourselves, trying to help people, you know, embrace the power of ordinals.
Awesome. And also, hello, Squint. Thank you for posting and saying hi. It's very cool that we get that little... Can you guys see that? The posts that come up on the side? Awesome. Yeah, Empress, go for it.
Yeah, I'm Empress Trash, and hi Squint, hi Nick, and yeah, I can see the comments. You can't respond, but I'm not logged in either, so that may be why. But
no, it doesn't let us. Okay.
Oh, we just have to say it on air. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm a lifelong artist. I have been doing. I mean, like I've been doing art since I was a little kid. I like taught myself when I was a little kid, and like, you know, I would hang out with my great grandma and stuff, and she would like do art with me, and it's always just been drawing is just like always been something I've done. And then yeah, like since like I emancipated myself when I was 13, and then I've been like pretty much art has been my life since in some way, shape, or form. I've both been worked in like the traditional art world. I have my BFA in painting, drawing, and animation. But then also I tend to stay on the outside a little bit more and operate like underground scenes or like more outsider artist scenes, and like punk art, you know, just being an artist really, because I just think like that is kind of being it, is like you are both in and out of the system all the time. Yeah, I live in Mexico City now. I lived in California for a while, and then I moved here or I was traveling, being nomadic. It wasn't like an intentional move, but I came to Mexico in like 2022. I think that was the year, and I have wandered around Mexico a while, and now I'm in Mexico City, and I'm just here like making art and causing problems for people, I guess. But like overall, like in crypto, like I have, you know, done like a ton of things. Anyone can look at my bio or like look back on the things that I've done. I don't like listing all my accomplishments like that. But I also generally have always stood up for myself as an artist. And also I advocate for other artists a lot who maybe don't feel as empowered to say things, because I just really don't care. Like my life is being this, and my life is like being independent and being an artist. So it's one of those things that is just throughout my time in crypto, like I've become this. have worked in actually like art archives. I study art a lot. I almost was a double major in art history, but I couldn't afford to do like the last year of it to do the double major, but I still study art always. Like it's just always what I'm doing. So for me, like it's not just about creating art, but it's also like helping other artists and contextualizing art and helping artists navigate to be their most authentic selves is like one of my main goals. And like while also staying true to who I am. And like being an ambassador, like I love it because it enables me to do that. And that's why I'm here. And I'm excited to talk about some art.
Yeah, look, we're so grateful. When Nick and I guess, concocted the idea, we wanted it to be really intentional and really authentic, and for it to matter, not just to say, hey, you know, these 4 artists are artist ambassadors, but to make it really count. So we really value it. And hello, Aoife, and hello, Killer Crayon, another couple of partner artists, and he just said art is life. It's funny because, like you said before we introduced ourselves, that you've studied art and you've had like that rich history in art, and Ollie came through in sort of a different way. It's funny because I've reflected on the space, the fact that the majority still at the moment, and it is what it is and it's okay, it's like a financial vehicle and they're flipping PFPs and they're trying to increase their Bitcoin stack or whatever, but it's an interesting gateway into art. And I think that as the space matures, and time goes on, and I'm actually talking like fairly longer time horizons, not tomorrow, that this really is, and it sounds a little cliche maybe, but it really is a bit of a digital renaissance in regards to like art throughout history. So people will, I really truly feel that people will study this era, if you like, and be like, wow, that was a whole new kind of wave or movement for art, because digital art is just another medium now for art. And people can sell art, artists can reach globally at their fingertips. And like you said, you can even advocate for artists globally who you may not have ever met before. So it's like, it's a lot richer than perhaps still what the outside world, if you want to call it that, perceives the space to be like. I don't know if either of you want to talk about that or comments on that. Do you want to go, Ollie, and then...
I can do it. I mean, I think Empress, you can go first.
I can keep yapping. I just don't want to like.
That's all right. We can keep it really open. You don't have to mute yourself. Like we can treat it just like treat it like we're out for coffee and we're just having a conversation. You know, it's really fun. And appreciate the people who are, Edux is here, and I can see Killer Crayon's written again. It's really cool to have you guys, I use guys very colloquially, have you people all contributing to the conversation, even through your little post, because it means a lot and it's great. We can hear that you're listening and it's part of your contribution to the conversation. So thank you to all the listeners at the moment. But yeah, like I was chatting with a collector last night who's doing some really cool stuff. He's sort of gone past just being a collector. He's really setting things up for displaying digital art properly, because sometimes it's not. But the fact that digital art, the fact that digital art is this Killer Crayons of art, I knew it. I had my suspicions, but at least I like to think so. I don't think I'm being idealistic, that it is the start of like a much grander movement when it comes to art.
So right now, because actually, I mean, I have a lot to say on this, so feel free to interrupt me. But
no,
like
that's the point.
I have a lot to say. But so the Renaissance aspect of it, I've actually been diving deep into that and researching a ton. That's actually why I was late to this, like I told you, because I got into a rabbit hole of research that I started last night, like a new rabbit hole, and it's like the autism kicks in and I just get hyper focused, and I'm like, okay, like connecting all the dots in my research and like trying to like put things together. But like the Renaissance is like a key point in everything that I've been like studying right now. And actually, like an artwork I just like a few weeks ago released with Skrilla, Rare Skrilla, like it's actually based around that. It's titled FAFO, Fuck Around and Find Out. But like the concepts behind that is exploring like this new Renaissance and the implications of it, because the Renaissance also always has a spiritual component to it. It's not just it's not just like the normal physical systems around us, but if you look at most renaissances through history, like there is like a strong spirituality that comes out of it. And right now though, like the way I view it is like we have so many spiritualities, and this renaissance is like the chance for the arts to kind of like bring everyone together so we stop killing each other in the name of our gods, is like my view of it, what I'm like focused on, and like the art I'm making and the research I'm doing, because I'm trying to figure out like, well, what's the root of like some of these conflicts through the context of art history, through the context of these like more raw truths that artists capture in their work. Because when you're dealing with narratives and current narratives and systems, and especially with news, which is like a huge media, I mean, a lot of us agree that mainstream media is an issue. A lot of us agree that, and like there's a lot of misinformation out there, and it's really hard to know what's truth or not. And that's when I start diving back into like art history personally, because it grounds me, because I trust artists overall. While what they're talking about may not be literal, there is a truth in what they're talking about. They are reflecting the time and space that they're in when they create that work. And going back and revisiting that and trying to understand what they were saying, and understanding over thousands and thousands of years artists have been doing this, there's a larger context that comes out that you can see. And then on top of that, you can start creating art with it and put it like make it within the digital space. So for me right now, it's amazing because not only am I having AI assist me in this research, which is very like, it's hard research to like bridge all these different gaps. But since AI can like translate all languages and instantly pull from archives, or if it can't access it, I can access PDFs. Like all of that helps me with that part of it to be able to do it faster. So I'm not spending months and months in a library trying to dig through a book to figure out one obscure piece of knowledge that I need to like piece everything else together. But then on the same time, like that enables me to conceptualize and create work that I feel is on a higher level, and at like on like talking about things that may not necessarily I would have been able to get to that point as quickly without the assistance of the technology that we have now. So like that's how I view it. And then on top of it, it's like the ability for me to be able to do this independently. I don't have like, yes, Gamma pays me to be an artist ambassador, but you guys don't put restrictions on me of like how I can operate, what I can do. Besides, you don't want me to talk about meme coins too much. That's fine. Like I can deal with that.
That's the one thing.
But between like working with you guys and then also selling my art, it has allowed me to be independent. And so I can do my own research without having education system dictating me what it is that I'm researching and what they're going to grant and what they're going to fund. I don't have corporations dictating to me like what I can research, what, you know, that type of stuff. And I just feel like I want this for every artist, because I think it's something we all like. A lot of us who want to be artists, it's like some people think it's all about fame and money and stuff like that. But for me, it's really just about having the time and space to focus on the things I need to focus on and research the things I want to research and create the things I want to create from my perspective, to contribute my perspective of the truth into a long ongoing narrative of art, because that's how it gets grounded in history, and that's how it gets grounded in like, because I'm communicating then with like old masters, I'm communicating with ancient, you know, Egyptian philosophers, because I'm researching all their stuff, and it's this like almost like large non-linear, like when you really tap into it, like really start seeing like the scope of like art history, it's like you're remixing all of these different ideas and trying to contextualize it for modern like things going on, and also like the perspective of like the issues that we're dealing with right now as artists is my view of it. Because traditionally artists, like a lot of times they sneak things in there. And like, even if they had like the Catholic Church telling them they had to paint certain things, you had Michelangelo being like, well, these three guys in particular super pissed me off, so I'm painting them in hell in the Sistine Chapel. Like, like you have stuff, petty shit like that throughout all of history. So like, and you can learn more about the dynamics at that time through that perspective than what the official historical necessarily narrative is, because art history has its own weird language and stuff going on, because it's all symbolism and interpretation and abstraction, and like we each bring our own thing to it when we're interpreting it, which makes it amazing to me. So that's like, just to say, like, a renaissance in technology, but it's also like, I feel like we need to ground it in understanding of things that happened in the past, but not to just repeat the past. To like, I've said this a lot over the last like few years I've been in this space, but to understand what from the past do we need to leave behind, and what from the past do we need to bring forward, and then what can we learn from the past to design better systems to serve all of humanity instead of just a few. That's that's to me what a renaissance is. Like, a renaissance isn't making a few people more rich. A renaissance is like humanity as a whole is uplifted. And it takes a lot of people to pull that off. It's not just like one or two artists or one or two leaders that can do that. It's like a whole network of people need to do that. And I just think crypto enables that. So that's my launch spiel.
No, I agree, Ollie. Feel free to continue on. I think, and I think that what it also shows you, and like you said, is it doesn't just happen in 3 years either. Like, it's quite a process. And I think I think because we live in an age where everyone wants everything to happen yesterday, people have very short attention spans. We live on like a timeline on Twitter and whatnot, that like, and it's certainly something that I consider a lot as a parent, but not just as a parent, but just globally, is that because everyone's in such a rush, and because there's that like, still that like financial kind of like, and of course people need to make money to live. Let's not pretend that that's not a thing. But because there's that kind of like aspect to it, the time horizons are so important. And I think like that's just going to take, again, pardon the use of that word again, that is going to take time for people to like reconcile with. Yeah, Ollie?
Yeah, I think it's Emperor's made some really good points. It's interesting because I came from a background of I studied kind of photography at art school in the UK, and attempted to kind of try and put some of my work out there, kind of displaying work in galleries and things like that, and obviously was met with the challenges around, when it comes to the kind of traditional art world of sort of displaying in galleries and being very restricted in terms of the sort of footfall in that physical location, that you might happen to have someone kind of come in and see your work and connect with it, and so I think the biggest thing for me, and Empress touched on it earlier, is what the space kind of provides in terms of opportunities for people from all parts of the world and all different kind of walks of life as well. And I mean, I'm not a full-time artist. I've got a corporate job, so I'm kind of limited to outside of the 9 to 5, between family and work, to try and I guess make my impact in terms of sort of releasing my work, but also trying to sort of collect from artists that I sort of respect and that I kind of enjoy their work. And it's difficult to see exactly where things are going to go with obviously the current kind of traction in terms of Bitcoin's close to breaking 100K, and it's to see what impact that's going to have in terms of how that's going to kind of filter down, I guess, into art. It's going to be interesting to see what happens there, really.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting. So, like you said, you're a collector as well. Did you start off, or did you join the space because you had bought Bitcoin or crypto, or
No.
as a collector or as an artist? I know that's, you probably don't want to pigeonhole yourself in one spot, but how do you say, like, what was your kind of entry point?
Yeah, so definitely a collector first. I mean, I studied photography and graphic design, was my kind of Bachelor of Arts, but quickly found myself going down the kind of corporate ladder. So only had a limited amount of time to spend kind of pursuing my own kind of art, I guess. But I always kind of appreciated art, and came from a background of spending a lot of time, I guess, as a teenager on DeviantArt as a platform. So that was my kind of introduction, I guess, to the equivalent of what we have today in terms of there. It was a platform where you could just explore photography, animation, all sorts of things.
The same dramas of DeviantArt are playing out now. You
Yeah.
know that.
Exactly.
Anyone who is, that's why it's like, not sorry to interrupt, but it's like I've been on DeviantArt. I was on DeviantArt like from when I was a teenager too. I still have my account on there. I don't go over there very often, but I remember early DeviantArt, and like it was drama fest.
Yep.
It's like, it's honestly like it's the same thing happening, just a different iteration of it.
Yeah.
And this time, no, artists are like more so, like back then there was more scarce. There was not as much money flowing around. So artist battles were fighting over like $10 commissions.
Yeah.
Now you have the artist battles, they're fighting over $100,000 sales. So there's a little difference in the scope of what's happening. So
definitely. Yeah, it's funny. I haven't looked on that site since probably 2004, maybe beforehand. That was probably when I was kind of going off to uni at that time and was too busy with drink and failing to get to lectures on time. But yeah. So I guess skip ahead to kind of my entry into Web3. I had kind of always heard about crypto, but never actually kind of taken the plunge to set up a wallet or even kind of buy crypto on an exchange or anything like that. One of those kind of classic, everyone looks back in hindsight and says, why didn't I do this earlier, etc. But my entry into the space was actually I was kind of doing a bit of reselling of kind of sneakers and streetwear, and through that came across like Adidas released their PO app. This was definitely before I even knew what a PO app was, but effectively it was, a little notification in their app, stick your email address in, and I did that. And that was the PO app that then gave you access to the Into the Metaverse drop. So that kind of, I guess, piqued my interest at the time. And then I set up a MetaMask effectively so that I could bridge the PO app onto mainnet. Sold it on OpenSea, and that was my funds that I then used to start collecting art effectively. A combination of art and probably some stupid PFPs like everyone does when you first join the space. My fair share of rug collections purchased, but
they're historical. Yeah. They're historical, Ollie. Historical rugs.
We'll call them that. But yeah, that was I guess that was my introduction, and from that point, it was just kind of full on down the rabbit hole. So that was probably about November 21. So a pretty crazy time to join the space, but actually just before things took a nosedive, kind of early part of 2022. But I was I came across NFT Catcher podcast with Michael Keane and Jenny from the Blockchain, Jennifer Suto. So I got into the Discord from there. That was the first time I ever had gone into a Discord server. But that was where I first experienced the community aspect, and was kind of hooked from that point really, and floated around various communities, and then eventually, after spending a lot of time collecting other people's work, and because of my background and my interests, I guess primarily photography was what I was collecting. I did a big kind of analysis of my collection a while back, which I need to update, but I think it was about 40% photography, and then the rest was split across, illustration, animation, all sorts of kind of other kind of art genres as well. But so that was my kind of background really. It was definitely heavily collector first, and it took me a long time to decide before I actually wanted to put my work out there. Obviously it's quite a daunting thing to do, so I kind of went in kind of slowly with starting to just kind of share some images I was taking, and then things kind of evolved from there really.
I just want to say to Ife that I've been on DeviantArt for 21 years too, and she's the only other person I know who's been on there as long as me, besides my friend, my oldest friend.
You're going to make me dig out my account now if I can even remember the. I won't even use the same email address anymore.
Throwback, yeah, wow.
Yeah, no, like my oldest friend, we used to fuck around on DeviantArt all the time, just being mean to people. That's all we did, like OG stuff. And yeah, like 21 years ago, that was that time. We were just being mean, like the mean girls at DeviantArt. We didn't even care about money. We were just mean. I think there was a lot of us, because we were just like, what is all this? We just want to make art. Why is everyone causing all this drama? So then we were like the anti-drama mean girls, if that would make any sense.
The anti-drama drama club.
yeah, the anti-drama drama club.
I think one thing, I've spoken about this in a few kind of spaces I've been on, and interviews I've done, and I guess one of the positive things I remember from DeviantArt was that you did start to build that kind of community of people who would regularly kind of like your work and comment on it.
And people shared resources. They would share their tools. And for the most part, like unless someone was just completely copy minting, like not copy back then, it was just like copy paste and saying they made it. Unless someone did that, like for the most part, people were open to like remixing and reinterpretations and stuff like that. It was a lot of the culture that I think is in crypto art. Really, the proto of it was DeviantArt. It was just a different. It was like kind of a baby version of it, if that makes sense.
Definitely. And I think the other thing was that there was also the kind of feedback. As you start to kind of build relationships with people through the platform, and people would become familiar with each other, just like people do now and on X, right? You start to build kind of, I guess, your kind of friendship group, and those communities kind of form around things. The idea of actually giving people kind of feedback, constructive criticism, is something that it was something I was used to. And you probably experienced the same in terms of, we used to have a weekly kind of crit when I was doing photography, and every week you'd sit around the table with all your peers and your kind of lecturer, and basically share what you were working on, and people would say, I really like that, or have you tried this? And that's something that maybe isn't always, a lot of people kind of, I guess, jump to praise, and maybe even if they think, it would, maybe they could try this, that they don't necessarily share that kind of opinion. You see what I mean? So I think,
I mean, like critiques for me, to give context, like art school critiques for me, like I cried multiple times in them, and I also witnessed people completely dropping out of school because of it. Like the thing is, art school critiques are specifically designed, like I was this is painting art school, which is like painting professors are a whole other breed of assholes. Like people think I'm mean. I just need to like call up a couple of my old professors, and they would make anyone, they could like probably talk down even the world leaders, being like, you fucking what's this shit, you know what I mean? Like painting professors are a whole breed of like, they see through ego, they know how to they know how to get through it. And like, that's their job. Their job isn't to teach you to paint. Their job is to teach you how to hold your own once you're out in the world as an artist. That's how my painting professors approach it. Yeah, they taught me how to paint, but there was a bigger part of it. And like, though, like, did I quit because they made me cry? No, I reflected. Like, why did I cry? What was it that came up? What am I holding myself back with? Like, and then I improved from that. And then if I really thought they were an asshole, I would make art about it, how I thought they were an asshole in art school, and make them grade it. And then they would give me an A. Like, they would be like, yes, this is what you're supposed to do. You know what I mean? Like, you critique each other, you have a meltdown, you reflect, and then you make art about it. Like, you know, that's what it is. And that's how art can help. Like, to me, it's like, again, the art resolving conflicts. It's like, art is a good proxy for conflicts. And because as long as death threats don't start coming into play, because artists are speaking what they're speaking, like, for the most part, like, you can resolve a lot of societal conflicts through the discussion of art, and it's a safe way to do it. And that's why, like, I think just pretending everything, like, oh, everything's okay, everything's perfect, isn't serving anyone. That's like, it's like, you have to have these hard conversations, and sometimes it's not. It's like, sometimes you need the Empress to trash to come in and be like, you all suck. Like, and just being like, and I don't care if you are angry at me for saying you all suck. And then and I say this in chats too, it's like, I will say what I say. I know what I'm saying and why I'm saying it. I will defend my position. I will listen to feedback. I will change my positions on things. I have done that. But at the same time, it's like, at a certain point, I'm putting something on a public forum for millions of people to read at any given point in time. I don't know who's reading my posts. I don't know who anonymous accounts are. I don't know who I'm dealing with all the time. And at some point, I just don't care. And I just mute my tweets. It's like, I said what I said, and I'm going to move on to the next thing, because I've already processed what I needed to learn from that. And other people can process what they need to learn from that, but they can do it in their own time and at their own pace, because I'm moving at my pace and I don't want to be slowed down, is like my way I view it. And there's people who can keep pace with me and there's people who can't. And that's cool. Like, and that's life. That's just life, you know?
Yeah, it's a really interesting, almost like societal commentary. It's funny because Ollie made the point about how he was drawn in, and going back to DeviantArt, like, and the first, like, internet, or not that they were the first internet communities on DeviantArt, but his first experience, or like something that drew him, was like the ability to have these sort of like digital internet communities, sort of like internet friends.
Yep.
Because before working at Gamma, I was a primary school teacher. I think you call it elementary in the States. I'm not sure. I think you might call it primary in the UK, Ollie. And I was teaching 11 and 12-year-olds primarily, but I taught anywhere from like 7 to 12. And I have young kids. So like, I was drawn in as well. Obviously, like, I was brought up, my mum was a very talented artist. It's a pity she never really sort of continued it. She had me pretty young. She had me when she was like 21. So I think that just changed her trajectory a little bit. And it was just a different era, rightly or wrongly. And we went to art galleries. My dad, I think he had good taste in music, because I think I've got good taste in music, and I like what he liked. But my main point is, I was sort of like, my friend introduced me to Bitcoin in like 2015. It took me till 2017 to get some. I wish I got it more, yada, yada, yada. But when I first kind of like pieced together NFTs, and obviously now we have inscriptions, ordinals on Bitcoin and whatnot, but just this digital art, or the ability to tokenize digital art and whatnot. But when I saw that it had like community and blockchain or crypto, Bitcoin, whatever, and art sort of all together, I think that's what made it make a lot of sense to me. Obviously, like, I have a lot more reasons why I love it now. But the reason why I brought this up was because, and then you were talking about constructive feedback or even criticism, because I think I think humans, we need to give feedback constructively, but also learn to accept critiques more, because and put out, you know, all that and the other. But when I was a teacher, that's why so many of the skill set as being a teacher has sort of like transferred or translated across into this space through many different reasons, communication strategy, problem solving, planning, but also just that ability to manage communities and provide feedback and like stand your ground. Because when you're a teacher, you can't just like, you've got 30 kids in front of you sometimes, and you might say, yeah, they're just kids, but it's like, it can be brutal. And so you have to have that skill set to be able to go, no,
I've
like
worked in daycares. I know.
Yeah. You know what I mean? And people joke that like, oh, that's like just like working Web3. Everyone's like a child, but more so the point is that you have to be able to like stand your ground and stick with what you believe in and learn to give feedback and not be everyone's friend all the time. Obviously, try and do it where you can, but also have that like resolve to be like, hey, no, I think that this is probably the way that you could do this, or I think that this, and you can give your compliment sandwich and whatnot as well. But yeah, it's so interesting how that all translates across. No, I don't even think just necessarily into this space, probably just into life, but into this space so specifically. And I do, Ollie, it's great that you said you used to sit down and have those times where you share your art and people would say, yeah, like I like this and this, but maybe I don't like this or whatever. But I think that is super healthy because Empress, like you said, like the best teachers, and there's actually another partner artist who goes by Ollie, even though that's not his first name, but it's part of his surname. But he said there's he's quite old now, he's still alive, a guy who designed the posters for Indiana Jones and like cult films like that. His name's Drew Struzan, and he worked under him, and he ended up doing some crazy stuff as well. Like the other Ollie designed like the movie poster officially for Moana and some crazy stuff. And he's like this relatively unknown guy in terms of like releasing art on Bitcoin. But, in that side of things, he's huge. But he said that the biggest thing when I did a partner podcast with him was how brutally honest Drew was with him about what he was creating, and how he actually like thinks that we should be more brutally honest with each other when it comes to that sort of stuff. So
I'm gonna say this. Okay. This is a story.
Jump in, yeah.
When I graduated from college, I had a vision of either working in the animation industry or the video game industry. As a woman, that's really difficult. Both were very difficult. It was right around Gamergate time, or like right before. It was like just weird shit, in both industries. But my school, because I was one of the top students in my school, they wanted to try to connect me with as many people as they could to try to facilitate me having a career in art that I wanted. And at one point, we took a trip, the animation. So this is the reason I have an animation degree is because I worked with a group of students to make my school implement an animation degree. That's one thing I don't think people understand is I literally went toe to toe with a major university to get a degree implemented while I was an undergraduate. So I just like to contextualize how much I don't give a fuck. But if I want something to happen, I'm going to figure out how to make it happen. And this is something I was like, the art school needs animation. And I had, it was a lot of politicking and fighting and different things had to happen, but they hired a professor. They eventually implemented an animation degree in art school. And from that, we got to go, because it was such a thing, like all these students came together, like led by these few students. It was like me and 4 other students who led it. It's like, it was a big deal. The industry was like, whoa, these kids are crazy. And so we went out to San Francisco, and I got to have private tours of like DreamWorks and Pixar and Disney Animation and like all these places. And I got to meet one-on-one with a lot of the people. And the Disney animation team, the creative director that I met with, he tore me apart so badly. I like cried for weeks from what he said to me after reviewing my portfolio. And the main thing that he said that hit me was just like, you're too much of a fine artist. You're never going to make money making your art. And that line, because of that critique, I took my time to cry, let my ego deal with the rejection. But that line has stuck with me till now. And every time I sell a work on the blockchain now, I think in my head, I'm like, fuck that guy.
Yeah.
You know, like
doesn't mean they're always right.
That doesn't mean they're right. It's
No.
like you can, like they can say the things to you. You can feel the feels for them saying it, but it's up to you to decide how you move forward from there. I took it and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna make money making fine art. I decided instead of trying to change myself to fit within Disney's whatever shit they have going on.
Yeah, everyone has a model.
I wanted to keep being myself. And that was my decision. Some people decide, okay, I'm going to change how my practice works to be able to work for these people. But at that point in time, this was like 10, 11 years ago, that was my decision. And I like have been like working towards having a fine art career since then. And before I even came into crypto, like I was selling artwork, I was selling paintings, I was paying my rent selling paintings sometimes. Like it wasn't like I was like not doing it. It's just coming into crypto, it was like a natural transition of where I wanted to go with everything that I was doing. And it felt like, hey, this is it. Like this is where I can operate how I want independently and interface with people and still make money and not have to change myself. I can do the self-reflection and change myself for me and how I want to be as an artist instead of trying to fit whatever all these other molds that are going on.
Yeah.
And so I think like that's the benefit of critique, that people sometimes like they don't push through and see how these words that are said to you can actually become your banners. It's like at some point I really hope I'm a top selling artist. So then this dude sees
Send him an email.
Yeah, like he sees shit. I told her she couldn't do that, and now she's doing it. You know what I mean? And it's like, yeah, that's spite, but it still drives me. It still keeps me going, along with a lot of other complex things that keep me going. But it's like that's what you can take from critique. Beyond like, okay, yes, he did say some valid things in there that I internalized. But that thing I didn't agree with. And I'm like, well, let's see if I can prove him wrong.
Yeah, and I guess you can take what you want to take and not take the other things. And I think that's a hard lesson to learn because some people obviously, and naturally, because we're all different humans, be affected in different sort of ways. I think like that would be quite the challenge.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you handle giving critiques? Because you do it well, I think. Like, you know, you and I, you've actually, no, in a really positive way. Like, I'm more than happy to express it. Like when we worked together and Ollie, when Ollie curated Luke and when you curated Iteration on for that drop, I asked you, oh, hey, where's Iteration up with that? And you're like, oh, you gave me some feedback on like the process and where you thought I had actually communicated with her. And I'm like, oh, you're right. Like I should have done this. And so I thought it was like very helpful because obviously like in my job, I'm always seeking to improve as well because that's good for me for personal growth and then good for Gamma and good for the space, you know, the flow on effect. Yeah, like hey, Ollie, like did you yeah, go on. Sorry. I was going to say like learning to give it.
I'll say quick like how I give and receive critique.
Yeah.
I only listen to critique unless if it's someone that I think has like is someone I admire and I want to listen to. That's the first thing.
That's a good first point.
Because it's like everyone has an opinion. Yeah. I don't care. Like it's like, and this sounds cold, but it's like I don't care because it's impossible for one human to absorb a million opinions about them at any given time. You have to like focus on like those that matter to you. And it's an ongoing process figuring out what opinions matter to you or not, because it's about figuring out who has your best intentions in mind or not, because people will feed you information and give you critique acting like they have your best interests in mind, when in all actuality, they're just trying to play some game because they only have their best interests in mind. That's capitalism. That's how all that works. So as an artist operating within it, you really have to align yourself. Like, who do I care? Whose opinions do I care about? Well, I care about other artists' opinions a lot. especially ones that I've worked with or that I admire. Like Ai Weiwei is someone, Lady Gaga, Paris Hilton, like all these like people that I admire. I care about their opinions because I've watched all of their careers and I've seen what they've done through their actions, and I'm like, those are cool people, and I want to try to like be like that. And so a random anon on the internet isn't necessarily going to get in there anymore. Beyond that, it's all about, you have to know yourself to know what critique you can take or not. And like, if you don't know yourself, you can't filter the rest from that. But hopefully, if you surround yourself with people who have your best interests in mind, they can help you figure out who you are. And then when you go in the world, you can operate easier because it's like, well, that's not me. You don't know me. You don't know me. You know, like you're just making you're making assumptions based off of a 2-second interaction. Like that is, you do not understand me well enough to be able to critique me. So that's how I approach it. When I'm giving critique, it's all about how I feel. Because when my boundaries start feeling really crossed, it's like I get feelings in my body, and I have to like step back and be like, okay, why am I feeling like this? And I look around at everything going on around me, and I'm like, this is where it's coming from. I'm going to draw a boundary. And usually when I'm drawing a boundary is when critique comes in. And that's when, and it's like, there's an energetic thing going on, I think sometimes, where it's like kind of like vampiric energy. And I'm like, no, I don't want this. And then they freak out because they're not getting whatever they wanted from me, because I'm not getting anything in return. It's just siphoning my happiness, whatever it is. And so, yeah, that is like for me. And then if a friend asks me, or like working with you, it's like I try to be as nice as I can because I did learn proper etiquette, but I'm still a piece of trailer trash. And my friends understand I'm rough around the edges, and like I hope can see through it. So
yeah,
like you do, which I really appreciate.
And I appreciate that too. You know, like friends need to, if you know someone, then it's a completely different interaction. Yeah, Ollie, what about yourself? Because you working in the corporate world, feedback could probably, like you said, be brutal. And then I actually just was playing around with the site and actually can show what people have commented. So I might bring one up after you talk about this and we can talk about it.
Sure. I think Empress hit the nail on the head. I mean, I think it all comes down to people's intent. So, you know, if their intent is good, then and obviously sometimes it's difficult to tell, right? But I think the longer you spend with people, and if you are able to improve your ability to kind of not judge people, but kind of assess people and get a feel for whether they are being truthful and, you know, and they have good intentions. You know, I think that's quite important. I think again the importance of, you know, becoming part of a community, and a lot of those, you know, I've met some great people through all kinds of different communities, not necessarily kind of art communities, you know, I guess projects that started out as kind of PFPs, but then, you know, you often end up with a kind of, you know, an art channel within the Discord, and that starts to become kind of people grouped together there and start kind of sharing ideas and providing feedback. So I think in general, you know, I guess the opportunity to have feedback given and take that feedback on board is there. You just have to kind of find the right group of people that you fit in with. And that, you know, that can be quite hard, but I'm a firm believer that there's a group for everyone within this space. You know, there's so many different people from different walks of life, and you'll eventually find a group that you fit in well with. So yeah.
Yeah, no, look, I agree. I think that's the thing. Again, prior to this being, well, within reason, but like certainly it's expanded. It's become so much more vast in terms of the ability to like find that group or find those people that you click and connect with, and those people that you're like, I'm happy to take this feedback because I trust this person. I know that it's, you know, it's well intentioned, even if I'm maybe offended by it. It's probably, I need to figure out why I'm offended by it and then learn from that. I just figured out that I could bring up a post. How cool is that? I'm learning as we go. So because it's funny, I saw this by Omer, and I was like, it's such a tricky one because people ask you this, but it comes down to that feedback thing. And do you think that that's a question like this? And I say this with full respect to Omer. He creates really gorgeous stuff, charcoal artwork, super detailed, but it's a tricky one because I think that that's like that financial pressure to be like, oh, what art should I create? I'm not actually targeting this question in regards to like Omer. I mean, in general, like the pressure to sell versus that pressure to kind of like, but versus receive feedback or know like what to create, or even like the reason why you're creating it. Because naturally when you put artwork out there, when it sells or you want it to sell, that's totally fair enough, because like we need money to live, and art is work for, you know, and people earn, maybe it's your full-time, maybe it's like Ollie and it's not, but you know, we're all affected. If someone puts their heart and soul out and no one connects with it, then we'd all be affected by it as well. So it's so tricky. How do you think people should even view this as a concept? Because I don't like, there's no, this is what you should create or this is why you should, you know, do you know what I mean? It's broad. It's so broad. It's like, there's no perfect art. Someone might connect with it.
For me, when I'm creating personally, I am channeling, and I am not thinking about that stuff at all. At all. I'm thinking about completely different things. And I'm thinking like, it's for me and it's for my curiosity. It's for my sanity. I have to make art. I go insane if I don't make art. I actually become one of the worst people if I don't make art. Like, it is very much a pattern. Like, if I go a few days without creating something, it's just not good.
That's like me with exercise. My wife is like, you need to go for a ride. You
yeah. It's the same thing.
It's our outlets.
It is. And like, exercise is an outlet for me too. Like, because I have a lot of emotions. I'm a very emotional person, not as being an artist. But I think like to know, and like, because the context of Omar's question is, in 10 to 20 years, the art on Bitcoin from 2023 to 2025 is going to be the most valuable art to possess, is what he says. And then it's like, the question is what kind of art is appreciated? We don't, in 10 to 20 years, there's so much chaos between 10 and like now and 10 and 20 years from now. There's no way to like, that speculation is really hard. What you can do as an artist is like center yourself and stand in your truth and like relate it to the context of everything going on, and just keep working and doing it and like learning and growing and striving to be the best you can. Because the ultimate question, it's like, in 10 to 20 years, what kind of art is going to be appreciated? Well, hopefully the artists that have been working for the last 10 or 20 years and are still around doing it at that point. And also, but it's also like the way the decentralization is like, churches aren't determining who's the famous artist now. We're trying to pull it away from corporations right now to determine who's the famous one. And it's like, we're trying, like, museums, that's a way to determine, but at the same time, that is only to people who value museums. There's a lot of people out there who don't. And it's like, what art do they appreciate? Like, then you have the whole outsider artist scheme. You then just have like pop art. You also have all the different mediums of art, and there's fan bases for each type of art. And so instead of thinking about, like, for me, it's like, how can in the here and now I build another stepping stone to make sure my art and my story keeps moving forward. So then in 10 to 20 years from now, either I'm still around, or at least the maximum amount of my story is out there, and then the world can decide if I'm not around, because it's out of my control at that point. But I can do everything while I'm alive to make sure that I keep grinding. And it's like, in like a post I made, it's like I've actually accomplished every goal that I've wanted in my career. It never was like, I mean, the idea of being in a museum and all that stuff is super cool, but that actually never was a goal of mine. A goal of mine is everything I'm doing right now. Like I literally this all last night and this morning was researching cross intersectional views of Egyptology to like all these different other religions to try to understand some things. And it's like when I was a little kid, like I loved researching that stuff. Like, and that's what I'm doing now. And then I make art about the stuff that I'm like researching and doing. That's what I've always wanted. There isn't much more that I want than that. And as long as I can keep doing that and keep doing that grind, I don't need much more. But like, where is that going to go? I don't know. For any other artists, we don't know. I do know historically that there are artists that sell for a lot in the time that they're alive, and they are still mentioned in the history books. But the artists that are revered are the ones that make their own path. And the ones that somehow, I said this in a chat the other day, they somehow operate both within the system and outside the system. It's almost like they're quantum, because their art then starts to transcend time, like literally to the point that we're still talking about it today, even though it was created like hundreds of years ago. So like thinking, I don't like, how does that happen? I don't know exactly. Like each person is different, because that's evolution, like cultural evolution, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it touches on why I brought this up, because I think as humans, we obviously like have our needs, and so to feel that like straight away, or after you create your art, is probably like obviously very soothing. But having that longer, again, talking about like time horizons, I think is important. It's certainly a hard thing to reconcile with, and be like, I might not get what exactly like that sensation in the short term. But yeah, that's why I brought that up, because I feel like you're answering Killer Crayon's comment, like just from what you were saying. Yeah, Ollie, like it's the same, mate. Like you collect stuff, so you've obviously made artists, given them that dopamine hit, but you've put artwork out, and some is, everyone has, like everyone's done things in their life. I don't just mean in the space. Like I've done things in my life where I get that dopamine hit because people pat you on the back and say great work and all that sort of stuff. And then you do some things and it's thankless, or you don't get what you maybe were expecting, and you have to kind of like live and learn through it. But yeah, what do you sort of like, how do you deal with it?
Yes, tough one.
It's so tough. It's a yeah. That's the point of these. We beyond the canvas. It's like much more like the real human level of discussion. That's why that was my goal here. I'm glad we're doing it.
Yeah, I guess as Empress said, no one has a crystal ball. No one knows what's going to be kind of valued in the future versus now. But I guess it probably comes back to the point of making sure that, you put out work that you connect with yourself, right? I think a lot of people, obviously, it's if people aren't getting attention and their work isn't being appreciated by people, then they may start to kind of look at, well, what seems to be working, and then start to kind of emulate other styles or kind of other people's work. And I don't mean kind of copy, but I mean just kind of changing what they're doing to suit what they think will sell. And obviously it's natural, especially no one knows everything about people's situations, and they may be desperate to sell something for something to keep a roof over their heads. You don't know what's going on. But in terms of, I guess, the people it's about kind of, I suppose, trying to build a kind of legacy, and I guess just being kind of thoughtful about what you're releasing. And I've said this before, but I think it applies to ordinals, but it also applies to Ethereum fully on-chain minting, which is that when there's certain kind of, I guess, constraints or kind of barriers put in your way, and a lot of that does come down to cost. I think that's one of the challenges, more so on kind of mainnet ETH. Generally, is kind of more expensive than inscribing, but it really makes you question whether you're comfortable clicking that submit button and putting that work on the blockchain. And I think that's quite, it almost just kind of makes you think twice, before you do it,
Yeah. I just want to say some things on this, because
yeah, of course.
Just to backtrack, I realized while you were talking, what I was trying to say to Omar. Yeah. Was, if you support what you value now, like, this goes for anyone though, but if you support what you value now, like what you actually value, like in 10 to 20 years, that's what it will be. Like, that's what your life will be. That's just kind of how the world works. It's like you have to like build now what you want in 10 or 20 years. You have to plant the seeds for it. But then on everything that you just said too, this is why I'm a cross-chain maxi, because yes, I love Bitcoin. Yes, I work for Gamma. Yes, I see the importance of inscriptions and like the permanency of them and like all of that. I also see the value of ETH. It's like a high-end gallery scene in the most part, but then there's also L2s, there's also Tezos, and there's a value that artists don't like. I think this is a disservice when scarcity mindset gets put out there, because if you look at every single artist in history, when an artist is studying an artist, we want their sketches. We want to know what was going on in their head. And these other chains that have like very significant low gas fees, that's how I use them and I view them. Like, of work that I don't necessarily feel is like my top level work, but I feel it's still important to put out there.
Yeah.
Except I do put some of my top level work out on Tezos and people just don't buy it there. And I just leave it there though. But there's some work on there where I'm like, that's like one of my best pieces I've ever made, and people just ignore it. And on the same on ETH too. But I think it's understanding like all these different ecosystems and how they can support you in a larger vision of being an artist. So like for me, Tezos and Zora, like Tezos is like this beautiful community that I'm never going to leave. It's where I first minted on ETH, but the community that I found of artists was on Tezos in 2021. And so I'm always going to be there fucking around, being a bitch and doing my shit, because that's my playground. That's like, to me, the warehouse scene that I just like to do the stupid shit in.
And the Tez poll. And the Tez
poll. Yes. And so to me, it's like, it's about, I feel free there. I feel I can do whatever I want on Tezos because I was there from the start. I don't have anything to prove there. I don't have anything to prove to anyone else. The fees are cents, so I'm not burning money. I can mint as much as I want. I can explore and find other artists. Super easy. Object is like a website that like not only am I like I understand completely, but I've watched the genesis of it. I've given input to it. I know curators there. Like I like to think we're friends. Like, we don't talk very often, but we've always had like a cordial relationship because they kind of understand my bullshit. The object curators, they really do. They understand. Yeah, she's just making fun of everyone, and she's just having fun because it's fun to being someone who grew up in a trailer to be on the internet and be able to like be like, oh, you mean I get to like directly like talk about these issues that I see and make fun of them and try to like bring it to light through humor? Like, that's super cool. So that's what I view. And like Tezos, to me, it's like you can create all these contracts and whatever, and I just love it. I love it so much, and I'm gonna always keep minting there.
It's funny.
Zora,
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about Zora quick, and
Yeah,
all the other apps like Zora. Zora was like the first, because Zora I've been working with almost like since 2021. I want to say I've been on Zora. I was like one of the first artists on Zora before they ever became a mobile website. They were just like a straight up platform. They saw that platforms weren't going to work. They saw the oversaturation in the market. They pivoted like a smart company. Like, to me, like a very smart company. They pivoted at a point in time when the art market was tanking. Zora came in clutch and supported like a ton of artists through grants and like promotion. They did it for me. They put my artwork on their front page with Grimes, which was like a huge moment for me. Like, I'm like, what? My art is right next to Grimes' art. Like, you're putting me on the same level as her? Like, holy shit. Like, to me, that was like, whoa. And so Zora, they pivoted and supported a community that was really struggling because the market tanked and we didn't know what to do. And there was a lot of artists who were paying their art off of Zora rewards for months. And then Warpcast came in and all of that. And Zora's still building out. They just updated the thing again. But Zora is trying to pivot more to the casual minter, to the person who you just want to throw some shit up. You don't really care, but it's like more of a social platform. It's kind of like Instagram, but it's also blockchain. And it's like you can put really serious work up there if you want, but you also don't have to, because the community there still appreciates bullshit, like just weird web art and weird trolley posts, because a lot of the Tezos community is also the Zora community. So it's like there was almost like a transplant that happened, but instead of like Zora sucking the life out of Tezos, it was like a transplant, and now it's like they're like brother and sister in my mind in a way, or like siblings. It doesn't have to be engendered. And so all of this though helps with selling on ETH and Bitcoin in my mind, because it gets my art. It's easy, it's accessible art at a low cost to get in front of people's eyes, get people buying and trading. They can buy it for a Tezos. If they can sell it on secondary for 10 or 20 Tezos, it's super cool. They make some money off of my art. I make some royalties. Zora, their structure, I'm not even going to get into that, but like you can get rewards for posting on there. It's like if people like it and buy, like they can mint it. And so both of those are casual and bring the pressure down, so you can put all that sketchy artwork out there and you can put all the weird stuff out there, because in the future, artists are going to want that. Like, it's not about the collectors. It's about building a legacy so future artists can study your work and understand what you did. Because if they are going to follow you, because that's how you become a legacy artist. That's how you become a legendary artist. You can pump as much money as you want into an artist, but until other artists are emulating that artist or respecting that artist or looking to that artist for advice, like either while they're alive or after they're dead, that artist doesn't really have a legacy. So putting that all out there, and then you have Bitcoin, where it's like, I'm saying when I put stuff on Bitcoin, I'm like, this is really important because I'm paying like hundreds of dollars of fees to do this.
Well, and it's a spectrum, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like, it's like, well, that's why I brought what Squint wrote up, because it's like, there's actually, like, I'm not Bitcoin only, but I am Bitcoin first, because I see it as a spectrum of like, every chain kind of allows you to do different things, from sort of, if you want to think about it like experimentation, you can experiment on Bitcoin, of course, but like experimentation right up to like, this is like the stuff that I want, like, you know, etched onto Bitcoin. And so it's like, because it's funny, you brought it up because when I first got into it, into the NFT component in 21 as well, even though I, you know, had crypto and Bitcoin since 2017, but in terms of owning some art was 2021. Like Tezos was kind of like where I was just collecting art for the sake of collecting art and supporting artists. And so it shaped a lot of how I think now in my job at Gamma, but then also just more broadly, and why I became so attracted to the space. Because I remember collecting a piece of art. Oh man, I wish I remember her name. anyway, I'm sorry that I can't remember her name. She was from Indonesia, and she really, like, she was from like a little village in Indonesia. Like we DM'd and I learned a little bit about her, and she created this gorgeous stuff. She ended up dropping some stuff on Stacks, which is like a Bitcoin L2 that Gamma has a product offering for as well. It's where we started because I introduced her to it. And so, but the point of my story here is that it was the first time where I realized that this space is allowing artists to have a global audience, and they can like, and depending on where you're from, like if she sold, like when I bought her art, it was like for me, and I live in Australia, and I'm lucky, I've got a good job and I earn money, and so so I think it cost me all of like $10, which for me is obviously not a lot. Sometimes it feels like a lot, but it's not a lot in general. And Berong, he's from Indonesia as well, Killer Crown. Yeah, it wasn't him though. But for her, $10 was like food. I don't want to like over generalize. Like it was probably like food for a couple of weeks. So it's like that's why I think all of these chains are so important, because for her or artists perhaps like that, where $10 is food for a couple of weeks, Bitcoin's not going to be. It's just actually not going to be an option. Whereas Tezos is going to be an option, and that's why I think like being respectful and understanding that it's like this spectrum is cool.
Also, like to me, it's like it's a clear ladder to climb. And it's like almost like the network fees determine how exclusive the artwork is, I guess. And it's like Tezos is accessible to everyone, and it doesn't devalue the art though. That's the thing. It's like there's some extremely profound pieces of work on there, and most of it is highly, highly undervalued. I still think to this day, because there's so many artists that came out of that original Hickennick scene in 2021 that are like really important artists in the scene now. And like, or they are important artists overall, and they came and did stuff on Tezos. And so it's just like there's this weird thing because of the coin value that people undervalue the art, and that just sucks. But at the same time, it is part of the dynamics. And then you have like ETH mainnet, and the fees on that are not, like, so this was why Tezos worked when it did, because there wasn't an alternative at that time that really worked well besides Polygon that was low fees for artists to do work on. And Tezos was where we could do that, where we could, like, me living, like at that time I was living in Oakland, California. Me living in Oakland, California, I could support an artist in the middle of nowhere in a jungle somewhere and like buy their work for $5 or $10, which to me is like a coffee out in my scale of economics. But I get dope art and they get like money to live and be a little bit more independent and improve their quality of life. And it's like, to me, that's a win-win-win-win, like across the board. But it doesn't, like, the thing is what ends up happening sometimes is I think these artists in other countries, people see that and they're like, oh, well, their scale of economics, we don't have to value them as high because they're in this other country, which is total colonialistic shit.
Yeah.
It's just, for me as someone, I search for artists. Like that's one of the things I do on Tezos a lot is I'm trying to find newer artists or like artists that maybe don't have notice and it's like their work is undervalued. It's like, I'm not trying to say you should only be buying their art for $1. I'm saying this art is dope and I'm getting it while it's $1, but it should be worth like $100, $200 like any other artist at this level. And just because of their geolocation, it shouldn't like devalue their art or because of like the chain that they're on. And I think a lot of us artists are saying that. I'm not the only one, but there's a lot of us.
And again, I think it probably, I hope, is that time horizon thing. Like, well, let's say, it's because it's just where it's at right now. And I want to do a little test just because I can. So, for example, I'll pull up, and then Ollie, I'll pull yours up as well. Let's see how it looks. What happens here? Okay, cool. Yeah, it's up on the stream. Like, this is some of your work. Hey, Empress's work on Bitcoin. If you're watching, go check it out. Gamma.io/, what is it? Is it Empress Trash in all one word? But yeah, you know, like, this is like, just feel free to actually like expand on as much as you like. But when you're deciding what goes where, like, how did you, and you know, you can comment on a specific piece if you like, but then, or just in general, like, how did you decide, like, hey, these pieces are going onto Bitcoin specifically?
For me, when I'm creating and minting, I'm in pure chaos mode. So asking me my reasoning why I do anything, I think it's just in a mostly instinct.
Yeah.
And whatever I'm going through at that moment in time, and I just feel like certain art needs to be certain place. Like, I literally, like, sometimes I feel like a werewolf. Like, I'm a feral child where I'm just like, okay, like, I have this, like, I want to put something on Bitcoin, and either I'll make art specifically for Bitcoin, or I'll dig through my art and be like, oh, this is what needs to go up there.
So it's a feeling.
It's a feeling. It's a feeling. It's definite. And like, where I put art is always a feeling, I think. And it's been like that since I started. Like, when it used to be between Tezos and just ETH. Like, I would be like, most of my work I would put on Tezos, but then once in a while I'd be like, ooh, this one feels like it needs to go on ETH. And I don't know why sometimes. After I'll know why. But on Bitcoin especially, like, a lot of my, as you can see, all the work has like feminine figures in it. And it's a certain style. So because it has to be smaller, I had to change, like, I had to kind of adapt and change like my normal AI glitch processes to create the work. So a lot, like, it is like, I keep wanting to explore the feminine form, but then still trying to like, how do I create what my work is normally very elaborate, and like, how do I minimize that down and still have it be impactful and get the message across, is what I'm thinking about, like, across the board with all of these. And I think, like, I mean, femininity in my art is like always there. It's like an ongoing theme in all of my art. But I think especially on Bitcoin, because I think financial industries and also like trading in general is so heavily male dominated that it's like, I almost feel like on Bitcoin, it's like this very big masculine energy, and I'm slapping on it like, hi, I'm a lady. I'm a lady.
Totally. Well, everyone always says Satoshi was he, and I'm like, well, could have been he, she, they, could have been a group. Like, why do we always? Why do we? We don't know. And it shouldn't even matter totally. And I, you know, like, as you know, I'm a fan. I've got a couple of them. One of them, like, it was very important to me. But yeah, no, that's fascinating. And it's just, well, like you said, it's you realize afterwards. Keep going. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. You just stimulated a thought. That's why.
No, sorry. Just one last thing before we move on from that is,
I wasn't trying to move.
Small format. Like, I brought this up in Spaces, but on Tezos, early Hickennick, we did like a whole thing of the smalls where it was 10 pixel by 10 pixel art. And actually, some of my first ordinals in a different wallet.
I'll pull it back up while you're talking about it.
Yeah, but some of my first ordinals, which I did like a month or two after Ordinal Theory even came out, like, I don't remember when they were done, but they're actually the smalls that we did on Tezos. I actually reinscribed them on Bitcoin because I'm like, oh, these 10 pixel by 10 pixel art that we did on Tezos, I'm like, this is like perfect for inscription. It's like, but we were doing that on Tezos as like a protest and just to have fun and be dicks and like, you know, just do whatever. Like, okay. But like, to me, it's like also like Bitcoin. That's what I love about it. Like, on the inscription side, if you want to do bigger stuff, you can go to Counterparty and like do stuff on there, because they were telling me you can do like AR weave and like link the work to that, and you can like go up to like whatever size you want, and they're working on stuff with that. So if you want to do big stuff on Bitcoin there, it's not like you can't, but it's like, for me, the special thing about Gamma and inscriptions is that small size and trying to challenge myself. But Ollie's the compressionist, and
Ollie will be great.
I'm not the one who should be talking about this. I'm just the conceptual. I love doing this. I'm not.
But you still like working within, like we've said it before, but you still like working or the challenge of the straitjacket. And it's funny, Ollie, like it's actually, it harks back to what you were talking about before. Like you've kind of found your tribe, if you like, this kind of compressionist group. Like Ella and DIID or Did, however you pronounce it, and Doc T and I guess like a raft of others. And this is some of the work that you've put on Bitcoin. But I guess like you are like very about putting things on chain, and I love that because I think like we said, it's a spectrum of what the artist and where they want to put it and what suits them.
Yeah.
So you can sort of broad stroke your art or talk specifically about the pieces, but it's kind of like it fits into that. You're very into compressionism. That's kind of like the tribe or the community that attracts you in the first place, and then determines where you put it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess I remember reading about ordinals, and for whatever reason, I was spending a lot of my time, obviously, on ETH. Mainnet, kind of doing my on-chain work, that was taking up kind of so much of my time that I was consciously trying not to kind of spread myself too thin, given kind of trying to balance the job and family and everything else. It's I kind of thought I'd go just kind of stick to that, and things were going well, so it was like I'm just going to kind of focus and continue to kind of keep kind of creating work and kind of follow that path. And then what actually kind of, I'd been thinking I should really kind of get around to properly looking into it and releasing something on ordinals. And actually my first inscriptions, you'll probably remember this. So obviously before I even became a partner artist, I used Gamma as my kind of platform of choice to inscribe a series of 3 pieces.
Let me look them up.
Load them up. Yeah, if you look for Alone in the Dark,
that's right.
Those ones will come up. So that was actually a 3-piece commission by one of my collectors on ETH. So he kind of approached me and said, "Look, have you done anything on Bitcoin?" And I mentioned that I was kind of looking into it, and then a little while kind of left it at the time, and then they kind of said, "Look, I'd really like to get your kind of first pieces if you are going to do something on ordinals." So that's when I kind of worked on this series of 3
that's
images.
Pretty epic, actually. I forgot about these. These are pretty iconic now.
Yeah. So that was a great way, I guess, to kind of dip my toe in. The first piece I knew, they were, I had a buyer for them, and I mean, I can't remember now what the cost was, but I think they were around kind of average 50 kilobytes each, and it was quite a busy time.
So fees would have been up. Let's have a look. We've got,
how many sats?
This one's 82 kilobytes actually, so pretty big. Okay. Well, relatively pretty big. So it could have been expensive.
Yeah, I think somewhere around $1,200, I think, for the 3.
Oh, it was fair enough.
It wasn't cheap, but yeah, I had that opportunity to do it because it was a commission, so I kind of knew, I knew what I was working with. So that was my first kind of introduction to ordinals, and also obviously to Gamma. And then, we obviously connected, and you helped me put these into a collection, because obviously at the time they were just kind of inscribed as 3 separate inscriptions, and they weren't kind of linked to each other in any way. So that's kind of where I went from there. And then I suppose in terms of kind of knowing, what pieces I want to put where, in my own mind, I wanted to, I guess, differentiate between the work. So for me, I tried to make sure that I wasn't taking effectively what I would have minted on ETH on chain, if you see what I mean. So I tried to, I work with probably a much more limited color palette for the pieces that I've released here. So, you know, this kind of negative kind of image, very, very kind of similar location actually to where the kind of trio of images were taken, all within a kind of a walk. So for me, I kind of wanted to, I guess, give them their own. Obviously, they're all using dithering, right, as a way of kind of compressing the image and kind of color palette reduction. But I kind of wanted to make them look distinctly different from the collections that I've released on Ethereum mainnet. Just personal preference, nothing really deliberately kind of driving that, but it kind of was the direction I decided to go in, I guess.
And you've released some work on Chain on ETH since. So do you sort of think, like, what do you think? It might be a hard question. What would be like the driving factor to be like, this is for ETH, or this is something I believe I want to put on ETH for whatever reason, versus this is my next inscription? Or maybe that's not answerable.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I don't really know. I guess in terms of, I mean, I think I've kind of shared some of the stuff I'm kind of working on at the moment, but and I haven't actually decided where that's going to be released yet in terms of possibly a collection. But I started kind of exploring using code to kind of reinterpret photography. So I kind of, again, with the help of ChatGPT, to write me some code, and I could kind of iterate with it and kind of tell it what I wanted it to do. Kind of came up with this process of effectively kind of passing an image in and breaking it into a grid, and then getting it to effectively pick the most common color within that grid, within that square in the grid, effectively, and then rebuild it, you know, into a new image. And I had, you know, I'm able to kind of adjust the canvas size and things like that. And I've got it to a point now where I can effectively just kind of pass in an input image, and I can kind of play around with the size and whether I want it to kind of magnify it, and it's coming out in these kind of effectively pixel art, but from a photograph. You see what I mean? So I've kind of I was looking at the way that everything in technology is obviously about kind of bigger and better and faster, and in photography, obviously, it's you know, every new camera comes out, it's more megapixels than the last ones, and it's got, you know, sharper images and everything else. So I kind of like the idea of actually saying, well, I'm trying to make the image sizes, I'm trying to make the images smaller to be able to, you know, mint them on chain or inscribe them without having to spend an absolute fortune. And so I kind of, started kind of exploring the idea of actually using a much smaller, you know, resolution effectively, but trying to get that balance right where actually you can still see what the image is of. So one of the recent examples was kind of waves crashing against kind of rocks at the beach. And I managed to get that to a point where I think, at least, that's what it looks like. And obviously sometimes it's difficult because you've seen it and you've worked with it so much that you see it probably differently from what other people see. But anyway, that's just something I'm working on at the moment, and haven't exactly decided yet what I'm going to do with it or where I'm going to release it. But, you know, that's kind of what I'm working on at the moment.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because, like you said, I think the key point or the takeaway is that it's authentic to you, and that's the key to start with. And it harks back to even what Omer was asking before, and what Empress, I thought, like, emphasizing what she said is like, it has to be authentic to you to start with, and it sounds like that. So yeah, I look forward to seeing what you do with that. We're getting to that 90-minute mark, so we might start to wrap up. So it's funny, it says, I'm not sure if it's I'd like to think it's how many people are watching us right now, but it could be cumulative. It said we've had like 574 views or viewers, which is on the screen, which is quite nice. Thank you for tuning in.
Oh my gosh, we're so popular.
I know. I look at us. But what I was going to say, Empress, was
We're the cool kids. We're the cool
yes,
kids.
so
Hold on,
cool.
let me cool kids. You
Woohoo. Oh
be
yeah,
part
look
of
at
the
that.
change.
Can you kick it with what's the console cowboys in cyberspace?
Yeah.
What's the
can you I don't remember.
What is it?
Can you ride with the
Can you ride with the console cowboys in cyberspace? That's us.
Yeah.
So, Ollie just said what he's kind of up to, and I guess let's quickly touch on Follow the Marigolds, and then you can tell us maybe what you're up to, and then we can I think wrap it up. And I've had an absolute ball, and I think that I can't wait to do the next one. But yeah, Empress, I'll share the screen, and speaking of working with a range of artists from emerging to maybe more collected or whoever, but like such a raft of different artists with different styles and genres and techniques and backgrounds and heritages and all of the above. Something that I guess was recently up on Gamma. As you can see, that's the beautiful logo that Empress put together, which shows off bits and pieces of what you could collect if you jump on and inscribe on demand, and they're all tied together with on-chain metadata. And you can see here's some of what's come out. So it's complete lucky dip, luck of the draw what you get. But yeah, tell us about this and give it a little plug. Why not, while we're here?
Yeah, so Follow the Marigolds is a drop that we organized, and it's from this chat of artists that has been around since 2021. And it started as a chat that was like on Tezos to run auctions on Twitter for Tezos stuff, because Hacking Rick didn't have an auction function, and we're like, well, we want to auction stuff like ETH. And so we made this chat, and then from that, it's just been over the years, like adding people to it. People leave, you know how communities are, but it's been this ongoing chat. And you were like, hey, you should do a curation of people from that chat, was the initial thing. And then from there, I asked people like, hey, who wants to be part of this, and then conceptualized everything. And so we got this drop together. And the concept of it is Follow the Marigolds is I've been thinking a lot about symbolism in a lot of my meditation, research, art in general, because in the world right now, it's like we're all fighting over ideas and symbols is like a lot of what the core of what we're fighting over, and like what the meaning of symbols even is. And like it's like when symbology, like communication and symbology, like hopefully should like unite people, but it also can divide people. And so I was really trying to think of like, well, I wanted to do a drop that was like Day of the Dead Halloween theme, because I'm a witchy bitch. And
witchy bitch is great.
And a lot of my friends are, and a lot of people in this drop are in one way or another in their own special ways. Like we all just have different views of how that stuff works, but we all can still get along. We all come from like different religious and ideological
and speaking
backgrounds.
Of communities as well, like it's like that's the
but we can all respect each other's different beliefs, you know. And so there's that aspect of it, and that's developed over years, these relationships. But I let the artists curate themselves. It was just like the first ones that said they want to participate, they could participate in. And then like once we got through that, then I was like, okay, you have to have a marigold in your art, has to be 60 kilobytes. I didn't tell them anything more than that about my concepts I was thinking about, because I didn't want to impose my will on them. I wanted them to feel like I wanted to give them enough structure, like almost like a professor, I guess, like emulating how my professors used to deal with it. It's like, here's your assignment. It has to be under 60 kilobytes and it has to have a marigold somewhere in it. Otherwise, I don't care what you do. This is like master level classwork, essentially. When it's you really think about it is.
Yeah.
And so all the artists, like at one point, like originally Dania, Let's Glitch It, was supposed to be in it, but she had to pull out because just too much with everything going on. It was just too much mentally with her. And so Squint Dev graciously came in last minute, and they did work so fast for that.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, but it's like still really good work.
Yeah.
And so each artist, but yeah, anyway, I'm digressing.
No.
Like each artist made the marigold thing. I chose the marigold because it's a symbol of, you know, love, fertility, life and death, rebirth. Like it's a symbol used in Mexico City for Day of the Dead. It's everywhere. But it's not just Mexico City that has this flower. And so that was more of like, a lot of people associate, like in our region, people associate it to here because it's where most prominently you see the symbol, who puts the symbol out there more. But for me, like marigolds mean a different thing, and marigolds are across the world, like any flower, and they mean like, so there's a universality to them, but then each person has their own stories and interpretations. Like me and Ife have very deep personal like almost like religious connections to these from our heritage. And even though I'm of Nordic descent, she's of Irish descent, classically some of our ancestors probably killed each other, like if you go back far enough. But we shared this you know, like flower symbology. For me, it meant one thing growing up. For her, it meant another. That's just like one example of it. But then it's like how, like across all 12 of the other artists, 13 including me, it's like how does each person interpret it? So that's was the first part. But then also like the marigold, it's Bitcoin color. And I'm like, so this is the flower for Bitcoin. And I want to like make that statement because it makes sense. Like Bitcoin is disrupting old systems of exploitation, doing it. And at the same time, there's like a rebirth element to it, which also relates to the like Renaissance that we keep talking about. You know what I mean? And so there's that level of it. But then also I literally thought of it because I was watching the UFC Fight Nights 309, and they had like a whole explaining Day of the Dead immersive experience in the Sphere.
Interesting. There you go.
Yeah. And at the end of it, it was like, follow the marigolds. And then they shot a bunch of marigolds up like on the screen, but then they actually had petals or fake petals. I don't know if they were real or fake. I wasn't there. I was just watching the videos of it.
Yeah.
Fall from the ceiling like confetti. And I was just like, oh shit, that's it. Like it's literally it's like the drop should be marigolds. Yeah. Like I was like, that is a sign that I was looking for of like what I should have the theme.
And I said to you, I was like, what would you like to call it? And then you were like, oh, follow the marigold. And now
I was like, well, good artist copy, great artist seal. I'm like, that's what I said. I'm just gonna name it that because I mean,
that's true though.
Because, okay, so this is also connecting it to a larger, like in my mind, I'm trying to connect it to a larger narrative going on because we have the Sphere, which is a digital immersion experience that can be formatted anyway. But then UFC Fight Night, which is, you know, combat sports, incorporated artwork in with it, making a statement not only... Like to me, that UFC Fight Night was making such a huge statement that combat sports aren't just about murdering each other. They're about art, and they're about resolving conflict, and they're about nations coming together and resolving their differences in a civilized manner. Like to me, that was the statement I saw with that, and I thought it was profound. Yeah. I thought it was so important and so beautiful. And so I guess like that was, I wanted to like respond to that narrative that I saw being put out there. Like, yes, I agree with that. And then also here's a bunch of dope artists like doing like crazy stuff all over the world. Let's like talk about the symbology of it and like let's like continue this conversation forward, and using the marigold as a symbol to keep discussing it, almost where it's like it becomes like a way to like keep weaving a narrative, because even when we first, so the minting has been a little slow on it, but in the first spaces when we were talking about it, so many artists were excited about this concept and being like, well, when is the second Marigolds 2? When is Marigolds 3? Because there is like, people want unity. People want like to come together and have a peaceful world. I think there's only like a small minority of people in this world that want to like hurt other people, in my mind. And like, so when you have this innate want, and then also artists, like some of us artists can hold our own physically, but not a lot of artists are very sensitive people. A lot of artists are very delicate people. And I think there's something about when you have fighting people, like fighting sports, which is like the warrior class, but then merging art with that, which is like the priestly class, which if people who know these theories that I'm throwing down, like of different classes in society, not necessarily hierarchical, but more of like thoughts around things, like ethos of classes. You know, there's like the fighters, there's the thinkers, there's the doers, like that type of thing. I view like fighting sports as like, that's the warrior class of people. And it's like, it's giving them a sustainable thing. It almost felt like, to me, in all the turmoil going on and all the bad things going on, I felt like it was almost like UFC itself, that whole organization, everything that went on with it was saying, you know what, artists, we're going to protect you. We like you. We're going to support you. We're even going to incorporate you into our fighting games, but we're also not going to hurt you. You know what I mean? Like, we're not going to throw you in the ring. But, you know, if you want to dress up and like come to our events, that's cool. If you want to do some digital art for our stuff, that's cool. If you want to like make music, if you want to do whatever. And I thought overall that was such a beautiful message too. So that is like, I'm trying to carry that forward in my own way, in my own sphere, my own community. And like, I think, and like I said, like a lot of people resonate around that particularly. A lot of artists like the idea of flowers. I mean, we all make flower art anyway. So that's my long ramble. That's not my short speech. That's not my short speech. But like, I didn't talk about the fighting game aspect. I realized in the spaces because I was more concerned about like artists having time to talk about each of their art.
Of course.
So I didn't like unpack all of that in the spaces, and I wanted to make sure, because I love fighting games, and I keep
learning more about this drop as time goes on as well.
Because everything I do has so many layers, and I don't know how to explain it all. You know what I mean? Like there's more layers. I don't know, but it's there's always. It's not just like I'm like, oh, here's a flower, let's do this. It's like I'm thinking like, it's like I'm trying to have conversations with people essentially.
Yeah,
and
totally.
It's like,
totally. And I think, you know, for people watching, it's on the homepage. It's a great way to also just support artists. I know Ollie said, I'm not saying that this is definitely pertains to this drop, but you know, when you do.
Yes, we are Killer Cran. Sorry, all artists are angry. Is what Killer Cran.
Should I pull it up?
All artists
are angry.
All artists should start martial arts training. Yeah, and it will help.
Well, it's funny because, like you said, there's like physical art is an outlet. Being physical in a controlled environment is an outlet. Not hurting other people, but in a controlled environment is an outlet. Like this. There's so many outlets. Well, I think that's a great place to leave it. I thank you so much, Empress Trash and Ollie, for joining me and us on our first Beyond the Canvas. You'll always be welcome back. We're going to speak to like lots of different people, lots of different artists, but you will always be more than welcome and invited to join and help, you know, co-host live and be part of it. So.
I'm glad to come back and co-host and not be such a yapper. I feel bad.
No, it was good. We need to. No, Ollie spoke beautifully. I think that I like this is why I invited you two on, because I wanted the first one, and obviously, you know, sending love. Pavel, we know, was sick, and the artist has got young kids and would be in bed by now. But well, the first one had to be with our artist ambassadors. You know, we love working with you guys, and you two and Pavel and the artists have been Brilliant. And yeah, so thank you for being part of this first one. I'm so excited that we finally kicked it off. And thanks for the like, you planted the seed. It was something that I'd, had been thinking about, and here we are. So I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. And I'm down to co-host and help with any of the future and like, all that fun stuff, helping interview artists or even talk about their art. So
totally.
I don't like hosting. That's my main thing that I always keep saying.
Luckily, I love it. I really love it.
I love being co-host because I feel like it's like I'm like a passenger princess. It's like you're driving. I'll just like make sure everything else is like cool. Like,
yeah.
Do you have that term in Australia where it's like
you're driving?
No, like a passenger princess. Do you know?
What passenger princess? I love it. No, I inferred what you meant, but it's not a phrase.
No, it's
good,
a phrase from the United. It's definitely it's just like someone who's like, I'm never gonna take the lead like that, but like I can be here and like make things better. But also, it's just like Anyway, I'm rambling. I'm being weird.
All good.
And the sun is setting. I'm getting
weird.
Look
at this. We're gonna pull this one up. Killer Crayon with the laughing face. Well, Ollie as well, thanks so much for joining. Massive pleasure. Great to chat. We still need to do your part in the feature and really dig in a little bit more about it. And can't wait for, whatever I know that you mentioned to me, maybe like a little bit more of an extensive compressionist like drop. So
yeah,
look forward to it.
Yeah, appreciate you having me.
And thanks for staying up late. It'd be like midnight now, I think, for you.
Yeah.
So bedtime, maybe.
Yes,
I don't know. I'm not your dad. You go to bed whenever you want.
That's the energy difference. You're on morning. I'm on like my peak afternoon caffeine, weed high, and Ollie's like, "Can I just go to bed?"
Okay. That's the perfect spot to leave it. Good night to those who are good nighting. Good morning to those who are good morning, and good afternoon as well. Peace out, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.
And thank you, Ollie and Empress. Bye.
No worries. Cheers, guys.